Buckingham Palace throne room doors were tightly shut. Dozens of live television cameras were activated. The new King William stood straight on the raised dais. He held the ceremonial sword with both hands. Right below, Prince Harry knelt on one knee on the red velvet carpet. The cold, sharp blade lightly touched the shoulder of the younger brother who once declared he was abandoning the royal family to go to America. William read the oath aloud. He officially bestowed the title Lord Protector of the Realm upon Harry, a title carrying supreme power that had been buried for 500 years, suddenly came back to life. Why did William dare to hand supreme power to the one who once turned his back on him? Is this genuine forgiveness or a cold, ruling agreement? May 2026. The pungent smell of disinfectant wafted from behind the closed oak doors in the west wing of Buckingham Palace. King Charles III lay on a large hospital bed, surrounded by the steady beeping of a heart rate monitor. The disease had entered its final stage. The royal doctors shook their heads. They began counting the king's remaining time in days. Everything was fading from the inside. But outside the main gates, life went on. The red-coated guards still stood solemnly, holding their rifles. Thousands of tourists still gathered to take photos through the gilded iron fences. None of them knew that Britain's oldest governing apparatus was standing on the brink of total paralysis. At this time, Prince William had to shoulder the entire weight in the role of Prince Regent. Every morning, he woke up at 5 o'clock, facing a stack of work documents hundreds of pages thick. Diplomatic schedules, budget decisions, a series of state documents needing urgent approval signatures. By mid-May 2026, William was physically and mentally exhausted. Dark circles were clearly visible under his eyes. He realized a bitter and realistic truth. Trying to run a kingdom during this turbulent period of power transition was an impossible task for a lone individual. The cumbersome administrative system needed a second person, needed a person to share the fire with absolute trust. William decided to send a secret message. The recipient was not a veteran politician or a long-time trusted courtier. The recipient was a man living over 8,000 kilometers away from London. William's power-sharing decision revolved around a special title that had disappeared since the 16th century, Lord Protector of the Realm. To understand the terrifying power of this title, imagine the British royal family like a giant multinational corporation. The king is the chairman of the board of directors, holding full power. If the chairman is severely ill or unable to run things, the corporation needs a replacement. Typically, they will set up a board consisting of multiple executive directors to divide power, preventing anyone from monopolizing it all. But a Lord Protector is completely different. It is exactly like the chairman appointing a single co-CEO. This person is given full authority to sign all life or death contracts on behalf of the chairman, fire senior personnel, and directly mobilize the company's massive cash flow. In the complex constitutional history of Britain, the person holding the position of Lord Protector holds overarching power. They directly run all great national affairs on behalf of the monarch. They have the right to chair core meetings of the Privy Council. More terrifyingly, they are granted high-level communication rights and can issue direct directives to the armed military forces. The Lord Protector is not someone standing timidly behind the curtain of power. They are the ones standing proudly on the same stage, sharing exactly half the weight of the crown. Bestowing this power is not just sharing the workload, it is a confirmation of supreme legitimacy. The Lord Protector's decision carries power equivalent to a king's decree. When this position is activated, it eliminates all intermediary layers, severing the intervention rights of long-standing aristocrats. It creates the most direct and ruthless chain of command. The power of this title is so vast, so dangerous, that the British royal family had to keep it carefully tucked away in the archives for 500 years. They feared it would create bloody civil wars to vie for power. William restoring this title means he is breaking every safety rule left behind by his ancestors. He did not hire an ordinary assistant. He brought his supreme power out to split it in half. To resurrect this dangerous title, a series of covert moves took place, extremely rigorously, right in the heart of the capital London, without thousands of paparazzi knowing a thing. The first action took place in the early morning of May 15th. Before dawn, William personally drove a blurry plated Audi to an unnamed house in a deserted suburb. Here, he met secretly with the nation's top 3 constitutional lawyers. He did not use any palace secretaries or typists. William demanded these 3 experts personally draft an entirely new legal framework, detailing and specifying every power of the Lord Protector. He forced them to sign the highest-level non-disclosure agreements. If even a single word in this document leaked to the press, the rigid political system would immediately intervene and smash the plan right in its cradle. As a result, the document of power was safely sealed. The second action took place on the night of May 26th. A small private jet quietly took off from a private runway in the state of California, USA. On the global aviation tracking system, this flight was disguised under the registration name of a Silicon Valley tech billionaire. But the person who quietly stepped off at the remote runway at Farnborough Airport was none other than Prince Harry. He wore a dark coat, pulling a top hat low to hide his face. A team of royal bodyguards in plain clothes was already waiting. They quickly whisked Harry straight into an armoured SUV and sped through the night, heading straight for Kensington Palace. No paparazzi tailed or caught a whiff of this schedule. The third action took place at exactly 8 o'clock on the morning of May 28th in William's closed office. There was no one serving tea or taking notes. The room door was carefully locked from the inside. William did not use threats, nor did he reopen any reproaches about past family conflicts. He went straight to the point. William pushed the 30-page-long plan to restructure the royal apparatus onto the table. He proposed ruthlessly downsizing more than half the number of members currently working and drawing salaries from the state budget. And right on the final page, the words Lord Protector appeared solemnly alongside Harry's name. The result of this 3-hour-long meeting was the birth of an unprecedented treaty of power. For the first time in history, the 2 brothers stood on the same front line to prepare to sweep away the old remnants. William officially issued the invitation to share the throne. This entire concealed plan carried the facade of a family reunion story. But there was a small detail that completely changed the core nature of this invitation to power. Initially, everyone thought this was merely a touching act of mending brotherhood while their old father lay dying on his hospital bed. The truth was far more naked and sharply calculated politically. Upon carefully reviewing the list of Privy Council members and senior advisory courtiers surrounding him, William discovered they were covertly colluding, gathering into deeply rooted factions. These old forces continuously suppressed his reform policies, forcing him to follow the well-worn path of his predecessors. They used adherence to tradition like a noose to tie the hands of the future king. William realized he did not have a single true ally inside the palace's fortified walls. He needed someone who never feared this system. He needed someone who had directly confronted the courtiers, someone who dared to curse straight in the media's face. He needed someone who had stood outside the dynasty and clearly seen every rotten blood vessel of the apparatus. Prince Harry was not chosen because he was an obedient or docile younger brother. Harry was chosen precisely because he was a true rebel. Harry was the only poison with a strong enough medicinal property for William to use to purge the entire palace system. Why did William dare to bet the entire future of the dynasty into the hands of someone who once shattered the family's image? And what did Harry truly want to achieve when agreeing to return to the place he once called hell? Prince William wanted an entirely new governing model, a lean, sharp, and ruthless apparatus. He did not want to repeat the image of a puppet king, smiling and cutting ribbons all day according to a schedule arranged by others. William wanted to seize real control. But Buckingham Palace currently is a giant complex with hundreds of advisors, dozens of overlapping offices, and outdated rules. He needed a cleaner, someone crazy enough to smash that old system without fearing being cursed by the British media. The first action proving this craving for streamlining took place in early 2026. William manually signed an order cutting off the entire security maintenance budget and living expenses for 3 distant cousins of the king. He demanded they move out of expensive royal-owned apartments within 60 days. The older advisory group immediately protested. They flocked to William's office. They brought thick stacks of documents, arguing that kicking relatives out of their homes would create a PR disaster on the front pages. William did not argue. He just threw the document stack into the trash can right in front of the private secretary and coldly requested the Human Resources Department to proceed with cutting salaries that very afternoon. The second action took place in the press briefing room. Royal tradition dictated that every morning the press secretary would bring a pre-filtered news summary up to the future king. They eliminated negative articles, softened criticisms. William discovered this. He immediately fired the secretary right in the middle of the meeting. He ordered the establishment of a live data display monitor system right in his office. He wanted to see every number, every curse, every attacking article without going through any filter. William realized the courtiers did not protect him. They were merely blindfolding him to easily manipulate the throne's decisions. The deep reason pushing William to this extreme decision stemmed from his mother's death. He had spent his entire childhood witnessing Princess Diana being choked by the palace administrative apparatus. They isolated her, stripped away her voice, and pushed her into endless media wars. When King Charles ascended the throne, William continued to see his father having to concede time and time again to the pressure of men in grey suits. William swore he would never let history repeat itself with his own little family. He needed a power enforcer, someone who did not need to maintain a diplomatic image, someone who could play the bad guy for him, standing out to take all the bricks and stones from public opinion whenever the dynasty needed to perform bloody surgery. And no one was more suitable than the younger brother who was accustomed to being hated by the press. Prince Harry was craving a true life purpose. Life in the ultra-rich neighborhood in America did not bring the freedom he had dreamed of. It merely swapped a gilded cage in London for a platinum-plated cage in California. After million-dollar interviews and shocking memoirs, Harry realized he was stuck. He was framed in the role of an exiled royal man, only holding value when continuously exposing the family's old wounds. When news of King Charles's terminal cancer emerged, a giant void opened in Harry's mind. The rebellion lost its meaning. The entertainment contracts became tasteless. He wanted to do something that truly carried weight, instead of sitting in front of a camera lens whining about the past. The first action proving this change took place in a glass meeting room in downtown Los Angeles in March 2026. A giant streaming platform pushed a $20 million contract onto the table. Their demand was very simple. Harry only needed to participate in producing a new documentary series, commenting live on the turmoil inside the palace when King Charles fell ill. Harry's media representative nodded continuously, urging him to sign. But Harry did not pick up the pen. He stood up, shoved his hands into his pockets, and flatly declared his refusal. He immediately fired the entire PR advisory team that very afternoon. Harry did not want to continue making money on his father's hospital bed. The second action took place entirely in the dark. A month after refusing the contract, Harry did not attend any red carpet events. He used his own pocket money to charter a small propeller plane, flying straight to a refugee camp on the Botswana border. There was no filming crew accompanying him. There was no press release. Harry wore a faded t-shirt, a baseball cap, and spent a solid 2 weeks hauling medicine boxes, rebuilding the plumbing system for the camp. He slept on a folding cot in a canvas tent, ate canned food with the volunteers. Amidst the sweltering heat of Africa, Harry finally felt he was truly living. He realized he only found his self-worth when his hands were muddied with dirt, facing real problems and creating a real impact. The threat arose from this very craving. Harry wanted a greater purpose, wanted to contribute to society, and wanted to be next to his family in life or death moments. But he carried an extreme hatred toward the palace system. He considered the senior staff at Buckingham as toxic people who had destroyed his psychology. When William offered the position of Lord Protector, Harry stood before a heart-tearing paradox. To help his older brother and have the biggest life purpose of a human lifetime, he was forced to return to the very system he had once used every means to escape. He feared he would once again become a puppet, a new media tool for the palace to exploit and then throw away when no longer of value. The clash between these two ideologies exploded right in Prince William's quiet office at Kensington Palace. Harry picked up the 30-page document stack, skimming quickly through the clauses regarding the Lord Protector's powers. He suddenly slammed the stack of papers down hard onto the oak desk. The deafening echo shattered the silence. Harry raised his head, looking straight into his brother's eyes with a smile full of mockery. He did not beat around the bush. Harry asked William straight out, "Are you handing me power, or are you slipping a new leash around my neck?" Harry began criticizing every clause. He pointed out that every courtier firing decision, every internal purge he executed under the name of Lord Protector would be viewed by the British media as the personal revenge act of a hatred-filled, exiled prince. The public would dump all the blame on Harry's head. They would say he was destroying the dynasty. Meanwhile, William would still retain the image of a calm, clean, and perfect future king. Harry sprang to his feet, leaned both hands on the table, growling an accusation that William was using him as a human meat shield. He declared he would never return to be a garbage cleaner for someone else's throne. William did not react with anger. He did not loudly deny it. The future king slowly stood up, walked to the window looking down at the garden. When he turned back, William looked straight at Harry and admitted everything. William spoke in a cold, deep voice. "You are right. I need a shield. I need someone to play the villain. If I fire them myself, this system will eat me alive before I even get to wear the crown." William approached his younger brother, lowering his voice, but every word carrying the weight of 1,000 tons. "I need a shield, but you also need a war. You can return to America, continue complaining on late-night talk shows, or you take this power, smash with your own hands those who once hurt our family." This ruthless bluntness of William made Harry freeze. For the first time in years, there were no diplomatic lies, no PR script. There was only the naked truth and a bloody agreement between two men. Harry asked for a week to think. He left Kensington Palace via the back door. His next destination was not the airport to return to America. He requested the driver to take him straight to the Gatcombe Park estate to meet Princess Anne. The veteran Princess Royal was sitting in the living room, holding a cup of hot tea in her hand. She listened to Harry present the entire plan. Anne did not advise Harry to refuse. She placed her teacup down, stared at her nephew, and said a distinct sentence. "Do not do this for the title of Lord. Do not do it for your brother. Do it because this family is dying a slow death." The next day, Harry stepped into the intensive care unit at Windsor Castle. The smell of disinfectant hit his nose directly. King Charles lay there, his emaciated body swallowed up amidst layers of white blankets. The sound of the ventilator rang out steadily. Harry pulled a small chair, sitting right next to the bed. He grasped his father's wrinkled hand, covered in injection marks. Charles slowly opened his eyes. He no longer had enough strength to speak long sentences. He squeezed Harry's hand slightly. The king's voice whispered, punctuated by laboured breaths. "I was wrong many times. I failed to protect your mother. I failed to protect you. But seeing you two standing together is the only thing I still hope for." A teardrop rolled down Harry's cheek. He bowed his head, gently kissed the back of his father's hand. Those dying words completely shattered the final defensive wall in the exiled prince's mind. He stepped out of the hospital room. The freezing air of the corridor hit his face. Harry pulled the secure phone from his coat pocket. He opened the encrypted messaging app, sent Prince William exactly one single word. Agreed. This decision officially initiated a large-scale internal purge unprecedented in British royal history. What forces will the two brothers have to face when this contract of power is officially signed on paper? At the end of May 2026, Harry returned to Kensington Palace. This time, he did not go through the back door or use a car with hidden plates. His car drove straight through the main gate, parking right in front of the Grand Hall. Prince William was already waiting in his private office. On the desk was a stack of legal documents exactly 30 pages thick. There were no lawyers from either side, no mediation experts, only two men and a life-or-death agreement for the future of the dynasty. This document was not an apology paper or an ordinary family commitment. It was a ruthless political contract, drafted to bind every single smallest aspect of Harry's life if he accepted grasping power. William pushed the stack of papers toward the edge of the desk, demanding his younger brother carefully read every line. The clauses inside were extremely harsh. Clause 4 stipulated Harry must accept a comprehensive and public audit of all bank accounts, charity funds, and commercial cash flows he currently owned in America. Clause 7 demanded Harry immediately and permanently terminate all content production contracts with streaming platforms, refusing all interviews that did not pass through the palace's filter. Clause 12 stripped away his right to speak personally on international political issues without direct approval from the king. Basically, William was demanding Harry surrender all the financial and media freedom he had traded everything to win in California, in exchange for a position of absolute power inside the system. Harry picked up the contract, flipping through the pages covered densely in legal terminology. He clearly understood his brother's intention. William was not bribing him with family affection. William was using state power to bind him to the governing machine, ensuring that the person holding the position of Lord Protector could never run wild or create any further media crisis. Harry picked up the Mont Blanc fountain pen already placed on the desk. He did not request editing a single word. He did not make a phone call back to America to seek his advisory team's opinion. Harry flipped to the final page where there was a blank space for signatures. In the moment of putting the pen down, Harry officially killed off his exiled royal brand. He signed his name on every single page, confirming the complete renunciation of the life of a Hollywood celebrity to drape himself in the weight of a senior state official. William collected the stack of documents, carefully locked it into the recessed wall safe. There were no celebratory hugs, nor were there congratulatory glasses of wine. The power-sharing agreement was established in black and white, but the true test of Harry's level of loyalty to this contract only began when King Charles breathed his last breath. 3 weeks after the covert agreement was signed, the large bell at Westminster Abbey rang out in slow, steady tolls, signalling the end of the reign. King Charles III officially passed away. The entirety of Britain entered a state funeral campaign planned many years prior. Hundreds of heads of state flew to London. Military forces began cordoning off main routes around Buckingham Palace. Amidst that mournful and tense atmosphere, the palace's senior advisors began executing familiar exclusionary rules. They scheduled Harry to walk a few steps behind William during the coffin processions, refusing to grant him the right to wear military uniform under the pretext that he had renounced royal duties. They believed everything would repeat the script of previous funerals, where the exiled younger brother only played the role of an attending relative. But William immediately intervened and used the power of the new king to tear up the entire arrangement of the courtier group. Right in the first state funeral progress report meeting, William bluntly demanded the master of ceremonies to arrange Harry to stand on equal footing with him. He personally signed a special decree, restoring all military honours for Harry and granting his younger brother the highest-ranking military uniform. When King Charles's coffin was placed at Westminster Hall for the public to pay respects, millions of live television viewers witnessed a completely different scene. There was no more cold distance. There were no more evasive gazes. William and Harry walked in parallel, shoulder to shoulder, standing guard together on both ends of the coffin. This sudden change in physical distance immediately caused a shockwave in the media. Body language analysts on major news channels continuously dissected the fact that the two brothers were talking to each other naturally, directly discussing procedures without going through any assistant. The strongest reaction came from the administrative apparatus inside the palace. The private secretaries and elderly advisors began feeling their power was severely threatened. They discovered Harry did not return to a private hotel as usual, but was granted the right to use a working house right next to the King's office at Kensington Palace. Harry began appearing in internal morning briefing meetings. He read security reports, checked expenditures for the funeral, and even directly questioned department heads about unreasonably inflated budgets. The old courtier group began to realize Harry did not just return to attend a funeral. He was exercising control like a senior manager. Rumours began leaking to newspaper editorial offices, hinting that the new king was indulging his younger brother to abuse power. William completely ignored those rumours, resolutely clearing the path for the biggest step to announce his younger brother's official power to the whole world. The moment all cover-ups were broken took place right after the state mourning period ended, on the day announcing the first decrees of the new reign. The throne room of Buckingham Palace was prepared with the maximum level of solemnity. A bright red velvet carpet stretched from the main door to the steps of the two gold-leaf upholstered thrones. Hundreds of senior government officials, including the British Prime Minister, cabinet members, and international media, packed both sides of the hall. Everyone was certain this was merely a routine title-bestowing ceremony for the remaining royal family members. A silent atmosphere enveloped as the new King William stepped onto the raised dais. He wore the uniform of a general, his face stern. Instead of holding the usual conferment documents, William reached out to receive a Damascus steel ceremonial sword from the hand of the guard officer. Prince Harry slowly stepped from the front row toward the throne. The entire hall held its breath as he stepped onto the red velvet steps and knelt on one knee right in front of the king. William gripped the sword hilt tightly with both hands, lightly placed the freezing blade onto his younger brother's right shoulder, then shifted to the left shoulder. The new king's voice rang out loud, clear, and transmitted live across global broadcasting systems. He did not bestow upon Harry the ordinary honorary titles of Duke or Earl. William looked straight at the officials standing below and announced the appointment of Prince Harry as Lord Protector of the realm. A terrifyingly deep silence fell upon the entire throne room. The reporters' cameras stopped flashing for a few seconds because the cameramen could not believe what they had just heard. A title of supreme power, A political weapon sealed away for centuries had just been handed straight into the hands of the man who once caused the greatest crisis for the British royal family. Immediately, a political and media storm flared up with horrific, destructive power. Conservative politicians immediately made emergency phone calls to the 10 Downing Street office, demanding the Prime Minister issue a written intervention. They accused William of altering the Constitution without going through Parliament. Tabloid newspapers printed a series of front pages with bold black headlines, calling this a mockery of the monarchy and questioning why someone who had sold family information to America was given the power to run the military and national secrets. The old courtier group inside the palace began organizing closed meetings, searching for any legal loopholes to overturn this decision. Facing the colossal wave of criticism crashing down, William and Harry offered absolutely no explanation or appeasement. They stood shoulder to shoulder on the Buckingham Palace balcony, looking straight down at the bustling crowd below, officially establishing an empire ruled by an iron fist to crush all opposition. While the wave of outrage from the old elite and public suspicion shows no signs of cooling down, where will this kingdom head under the guidance of a tough king and a heavily scarred Lord Protector? The first Monday morning after the conferment ceremony, Buckingham Palace had a stark physical change. The offices of senior courtiers that once lay adjacent to the king's working room were now empty. They were moved to the East Wing, far away from the centre of power. The new King William sat behind the carved oak desk. The government's red-boxed document trays were brought straight into the room. There was no press secretary standing by, waiting to summarise or trim information. William directly read reports criticising his actions from the opposition faction in Parliament. He did not bother to appease them. He was drawing up a list to slash the maintenance budget for subsidiary palaces in half and crossed off the names of a series of aristocratic members from the list receiving royal stipends. A 15-minute drive away, Prince Harry established his new headquarters in the highest security area of Kensington Palace. The 14-bedroom mansion in Montecito, California, had just been officially listed on the off-market real estate listing. No divorce or separation announcement was issued, but Meghan Markle's total absence in London spoke volumes about Harry's priorities at this moment. He put the military uniform back on. On his desk were no longer podcast contracts or documentary scripts. Instead were the personnel files of hundreds of royal staff. He personally crossed out the name of the private secretary who had worked for King Charles for 20 years. Harry began applying the new media control code, forbidding all palace staff from contacting the press in any form. The one who once accused the palace of leaking information now held absolute power to gag the entire system. The combination of a decisive king and a heavily scarred Lord Protector poses core issues about how to run a country. From a constitutional and political power perspective, can the British monarchy survive when the throne strips away the entire traditional safety buffer layer? William and Harry are running the royal family like two ruthless executive directors of a venture capital fund, ready to brush aside the procedures of the long-standing aristocratic group. Does concentrating absolute power into the hands of two individuals bring efficient streamlining, or will it activate a wave of political resistance from the very people who were just stripped of their privileges? From a financial and public trust perspective, how can taxpayers accept this budget allocation? Just a few years ago, Harry was sitting on American television making tens of millions of dollars from exposing the nation's deepest secrets. Today, he holds the power to decide the allocation of hundreds of millions of pounds from the public budget. Will the cost-cutting checks Harry signs have enough power to whitewash his past of selling family information in the eyes of the British public? Finally, from a human psychology perspective, the sustainability of this alliance is a question without an answer. Ruling power always goes hand in hand with suspicion. When a ruthless decision by Harry unintentionally directly harms William's personal prestige, will this agreement salvage the Brotherhood? Or is the Lord Protector title actually merely a postponement, waiting for the day the two most powerful men in the kingdom directly strip away each other's political lives? Do you think handing constitutional power to Harry is a wise move to clean up the palace? Or is William manually handing a weapon to the person most capable of overthrowing him? Comment your candid perspective right below. Hit the subscribe button to the channel right now. We will continue to closely follow every dismissal decision from Buckingham Palace and bring the internal documents of the elite directly to your screen in the next videos.